Hello everyone and welcome back to the Common Sense Crypto channel. As with you always, this is Rich doing another video today on XRP. So I hope you're all having a wonderful day today wherever you are in this great world. We're gonna talk about XRP. And remember when you first got into crypto? A couple years back, they were all talking about the JP Morgan coin and how it was going to be the XRP killer. And we found out that it wasn't going to be the XRP killer. Well, Smoke did a great thread on how JP Morgan is connected to Ripple. So through R3 Corda, it is possible JP Morgan coin will be able to interact with XRP. The deployment of the Corda settler and its support for XRP as the first settlement mechanism. The Corda settler is agnostic to which payment method is used, whether it's JP Morgan coin or Wells Fargo coin or BAML coin or HSBC coin. It doesn't matter to us. We have no horse in that race. We don't have any financial initiatives one way or another. So you see how XRP could interact with JP Morgan coin. JP Morgan's Chief of Regulatory Affairs, Sandy O'Connor, also serves on the board of Ripple. There's so many ties between Ripple and JP Morgan. I think the whole reason the Ripple vs. SEC case even started was because JP Morgan wanted to slow Ripple down. I think they tried to come up with an alternative. It didn't work, so they decided to work with Ripple instead. Ripple is the only DLT company on the U.S. Federal Reserve Faster Payments Task Force, and JP Morgan is a representative on the committee with them. Do you see how everything comes together? As of May 17, 2017, Ripple is the only DLT company tied to the U.S. Federal Reserve's Faster Payment Task Force. However, Ripple is obviously doing everything it can to position itself as a leading solution when it comes to payments. Then they go on to mention IBM, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan is listed as representatives. We also know that Ripple has ties to IBM. They have ties to Goldman Sachs, Citi, Barclays, BNY Mellon. Ripple is tied to everything. And there's all these rails set up all around the world. In every single country at this point, Ripple has rails set up. How do people still not see that XRP is the future? JP Morgan connecting to Ripple's on-demand liquidity with technical documentation. Again, we know the ties there. JP Morgan acknowledged Ripple as a heavyweight in the age of CBDCs. Elsewhere on the agenda, the heavyweights from Ripple, MTech. MTech is working with Hedera. These are the heavyweights in the age of CBDCs. That I wanted to point this out because I see people always saying they will never allow Ripple to work with these banks or those banks. Ripple's already working with these banks behind the scenes. And we have all the documentation to prove that. You know, wait until the Ripple vs. SEC case comes to an end and all those NDAs that we know are out there. Wait until we get the announcements from all those financial institutions that they were working with Ripple all along. Now, some of you asked me about how Trump was talking about taxes. It's right here.
We got 6 votes. We don't even need the votes. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. No tax on tips, okay? It's done. Done.
And I like the idea of that. I don't think waiters, waitresses, anybody that works for tips, they should not have to pay taxes on tips. You know, most people take that second job just to make ends meet. And a lot of it is cash jobs as well. I like the idea of this, but I'm sure the IRS does not like the idea of this. But again, let's see what happens from here. This comes from Mr. Man. I'm not the only one who understands how rebranding in the crypto space works. Liquidity Hub is alive and well. Some will state it's dead, but that's a fallacy to those who lack an understanding in wordplay. Now that we're moving into real world adoption, rebranding needs to take place for high value players to step in. Remember when people were saying the liquidity hub is dead? All Brad was pointing out that it didn't gain the traction that they hoped at Ripple. And I think a lot of that had to do with the Ripple versus SEC case as well. But I think going forward, we're going to see the rise of Liquidity Hub once again. And of course, things are getting rebranded. People don't understand what Liquidity Hub is. They have to call it something else. Like the Ripple Custody Solution, aka Medico, Polysign, Standard Trust, is the next evolution of the same product. And going forward, custody is going to become very big as well. Think of all those tokenized assets coming to these networks. Now, I don't like Mike Flynn at all, and I don't think he's a good guy, but you got to take a listen to this. This is the first confirmation the 50-year-old petrodollar agreement between Saudi Arabia, OPEC, and America hasn't been renewed. Take a listen.
But here's something else. No one seems to be paying attention to the destruction of the petrodollar. Saudi Arabia has said, no, we're not going to renew it. And people are saying, well, how could this be? Well, if your two biggest customers for all of the oil in the Persian Gulf are India and China, it makes perfect sense. So when people stop doing business in dollars, what does that mean to us? Well, it's going to harm us. It's going to destroy our bond market. It's going to ratchet up inflation. It'll hike interest rates. Why? Because we can't cope. The success economically, historically for the United States and the world was that the dollar has to be weak and the consumer has to be strong. Well, that's all fallen apart. We're in a lot of trouble. Nobody seems to connect that with all of this overseas adventurism.
Like I said, they don't want you to know what's really happening. This should be all over the mainstream media news every single day, but nobody wants to talk about it. And everybody thought that the US dollar was just going to collapse out. But like I told you, look at the other countries that are tied to the US dollar. New York Times on the $29 trillion debt emerging nations face. It is important to understand how this debt came to be. Debt fueled consumption without matching production, all enabled by a global financial system that stretched itself with an elastic currency, the US dollar. Ultimately, the liabilities of the US became reserve assets in global finance, and the reserves got multiplied 10 to 20 or even 30-fold due to the alchemy of modern finance. That's how we get to a number like $29 trillion in debt. The real world consequence is the endless ocean of debt and misery the world's poor nations face. Debt peddlers deserve the same contempt as drug peddlers. You gotta look at the other countries that are tied to the US dollar first. Once they start falling apart, it's coming to the United States. And a lot of people don't understand that. People thought, the petrodollar deal's ending, the US dollar's finished. It's going to start elsewhere first, then it's going to come back home. New Janet Yellen, all Americans, both well off and those near the bottom, are better off now that wages have risen more than prices. Have you been to the grocery store recently, Janet? If you go to the grocery store, you realize inflation is not coming down. And this lady is just out of touch with the rest of the United States citizens. Things are going to get worse, though. I still think we are going to push towards hyperinflation at some point. More consumer protections for buy now, pay later purchases. This comes from Mr. Man. You know what I noticed? You know how things are getting worse than what they're telling you? Is when they start with things like this, buy now, pay later. But it comes with consequences. The interest is overwhelming. It's like 30% interest. And people are doing this. They ran up all their credit cards and now they're going to buy now, pay later options. It's almost like that, pay for cars here. That I forget what they used to call them, but they used to have those used car lots where people made their payments at the used car lot as well. That's all coming back. That's how you know things are not looking good going forward. And I think it's going to get much worse before it gets better. But this is the same reason I urge people to get invested into something. I talk to people all the time, and they always tell me, well, I have a lot of cash. I think I could float by the next couple months if I really had to. But it's eating into people's savings. If you want to offset that way of thinking, you invest in something that can give you massive gains very fast. Crypto offers that. If people don't like gold and silver, they get into crypto. If people don't like crypto, they get into gold and silver. But you have to get into something. Ripple telling about the upside opportunity. Whenever you're in doubt, just take a listen to Brad right here.
Shocking to me that the United States, the largest economy in the world, represents the bottom decile of regulatory clarity. I think when you get the real unlock of the United States economy and you get the real institutional money flowing in, I think it's just hard to predict some of the upside opportunity.
What he's saying is you don't know how big this is going to be. And that is what's coming. Because once the Ripple versus SEC case ends, I think that's when they will unlock the United States. And all of a sudden, we're going to see all types of big names that we kind of guessed were involved with Ripple and XRP. All of a sudden, we will have confirmation that they've been working with Ripple and utilizing XRP. But nobody's really utilizing it at the, where the demand is there yet. That will come later. That will happen through liquidity pools. I think that we're also going to see a lot of value come through ISO. That's kind of downplayed right now, but it's something every investor should pay attention to. You go and you look at the list of ISO cryptocurrencies, and if you're going to diversify, I would stay within ISO. I think that's going to be huge. And, we have not seen any value come from it yet. Once that value starts coming in, all of a sudden, the big pullbacks are no longer going to happen, in my opinion. I think it's going to be upward movement, steady upward movement for a good period of time. And it's going to be value that rolls in year over year. That's why I keep seeing people saying, we're going to run up to $10, but then we're going to pull back to $3. I'm not seeing it. Not if utility is pushing the price. If utility's pushing the price, the pullbacks might be small, but they're not going to be any major pullbacks, in my opinion. But we're not quite there yet. We all know it's coming, though. And until it does happen, you got to stay patient, stay positive, and let's get rich together. With that said, I'm going to wrap up this video. I want to thank you all for watching. I appreciate all of you. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great night.